Hey, what's up, everybody? You know what time it is. Your boy Jeffrey L. Boney here for another hot edition of Real Talk Junkies Live. So glad that you joined me on the day. Of course, always, we appreciate you guys, the RTJs, for tuning in. Make sure you share the link with your friends, your family, your foes, your enemy. It don't matter. Everybody needs to check out today's show as they always do. And remember, I want to encourage everybody to go check out the Forward Times latest news at forwardtimes.com. And of course, you can always engage with me as well as pick up my latest book, Don't Argue With Me, a no-nonsense approach to the issues in the black community at jeffreylboney.com. Again, that's jeffreylboney.com. And for those of you that want to advertise on the show or make sure that you get mentioned and shouted out, man, make sure you holler at your boy Jeffrey L. Boney so that we can get that information at jeffreylboney.com. So we're going to get right into it. You know, health and wellness is an extremely important topic, especially something that should be discussed even more so in the African American community. There's so many things that we as African Americans struggle with when it comes to health, wellness, not only just from a physical standpoint, even a mental standpoint. And so having that as an emphasis, as a point of conversation, is something that I think that we as African Americans need to do more of and have more of. And some people are great at it, some people are not so great at it, but it's always important to get wisdom, get knowledge, get information, get advice, tips, and things from people that do this on a daily basis and that focus on things like health and wellness and fitness, etc. Here today to talk about that is none other than my good friend, Miss Crystal Hadnott. She is an author. She is a fitness expert. She is a marathonist. She is, I guess, everything that you want in an individual that is focused on health and wellness and fitness. And let's welcome her to Real Talk Junkies, y'all. Let's give it up. Come on, y'all. Yeah.
No, Jeffrey.
What's going on? What's going on? All right. Welcome to Real Talk Junkies.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Now I'm gonna jump right into
my JY.
That's right. Jack Yates and now you got two books.
I have two books.
This one is called The
Finish Line was just the start.
Was just the start, a marathon runner's memoir of relentless resilience and renewal. Mm-hmm. And then you have the latest book, Rise and Run, a daily devotional to running your best life, all by Miss Crystal Hadnott.
Yes.
Now, talk about the first book here. The Finish Line was just the start.
So The Finish Line was just the start. It's a book that I wrote about my life. Everybody knows the quote or the saying that people say is that life's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And I thought about what that meant. Like, you go through all these different emotions, these different feelings throughout the marathon. And it was a way for me to journal my emotions and my experiences. Actually, I was going to see a therapist at the time. And she was like, well, talk to me. And I didn't want to talk to her. So I started journaling the things that I wanted to say to her, but didn't have the courage to say to her.
Can I put a pin there for a second?
Yes.
Because, you know, you said something that is also taboo in the African American community, talking about
therapy.
A therapist. Going to see a therapist.
I went to see a therapist.
Do you mind sharing why you made the decision to go see a therapist?
Well, you know, it wasn't an initial thing that I wanted to do, and actually, I had went to see my pastor, Pastor Rudy. Rudy told me. Pastor Rudy told me. I told him, I was like, look, I need to talk to you not as a church member, as a friend. I need to have a conversation. I was exhausted. I was like, and it's not a physical exhaustion. It wasn't, I was like, I really feel like I'm mentally and spiritually depleted. And he then said, it's about time that you come to me, because it looks like it takes a lot to do all the things that you do. And he wasn't even talking about like the physical things I've done. He was just like, to carry on as the person you're carrying on, when I know deep down inside, I know what's going behind the curtain. I know what you're experiencing that no one else is experiencing. Everybody sees, you know, a different version of you on Facebook, on Instagram, but I know the other stuff that's going on. And you keep up a good image, although you're going through hell. And he was like, that has to be exhausting. So he was like, I recommend you go see a therapist. He's like, because we need to know why you feel the need to still keep it together when things are not together.
So you were putting up a facade.
Basically, well, for me, it was like, you know, you grow up, and specifically in the black community, it was just like, you know, just pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You know, it's just like when you're going through things, we don't really talk about it. Just pray about it. And you just keep it moving. And I literally was that person that was pulling myself up by the bootstraps. I was just keeping it moving. I'm gonna pray about it, you know. It's just, and that was just my attitude. And I had really went through what a lot of people would see as a traumatic experience, various traumatic experiences, and I just kept going because that's what we're supposed to do, and because that's what we're taught. We're taught, and we're taught not to air our dirty laundry. You know, it's just all these things that we're taught. So I just kept doing it. I just kept moving, and I felt like if I got the degrees, got the good job, if all those successes would make me feel better, and it didn't.
So as you were dealing with this, did you find fitness and doing a lot of the physical stuff as a means to, I guess, offset those shortcomings, or the things like maybe like a vice or some sort of therapy?
In the moment I did. In the moment I looked at it that way, specifically running, because I felt like it was my form of meditation, and then it became a crutch because I wasn't dealing. I was just running, you know, and I signed up for another race. Hence why I got to close to 200 marathons. I was just signing up for races because I just kept running, but it really wasn't dealing with the issue.
Now you're making a lot of people jealous that's watching. You're talking about 200 marathons.
Somebody
that's watching, including myself, ain't never ran one marathon.
I know, it's a lot. It's a lot. But that was my thing. I was just like, I literally got addicted to what I would see as temporary satisfaction for what I was going through. Because I would focus on training for a marathon. I would focus on the sense of, success and kind of just like push through, because I felt like in a marathon, you're forcing your body to push through something. You're pushing through 26.2 miles. And I felt like, that gave me the high of pushing through whatever the situation I was experiencing at the time. And so the book became me then talking to my therapist about what I was going through, but I was writing in my journal as a marathon runner, like, you feel a certain way when you're at the start line. You like, it's like the first day of school, you all excited, you got your outfit ready, you excited and happy, and you're still feeling good. And then so each chapter really described different emotions, because like at the halfway point there's a sense of like, oh, okay, I'm almost there. But then when you get to mile 17, it's like, oh, I still got a lot more to go. I got 9 more miles. This is a lot of miles.
Right.
So you go through all these different emotions. And so I literally wrote in my journal as if I'm running a race, but talking about what experiences I was going through. And I showed my therapist my journal, and she was like, the day that you tell the world what you're telling me in this journal is the day that you're going to get true healing. Because the healing is going to be through you telling the story. Because as long as you're bottling it in, it's not, and I'm just sitting here reading it and you just write in the journal, you still need to share with the world. Plus, you'll get healing, and you never know who will be healed through the words that you're writing.
Right. I want to go back to what you said in the beginning, that you didn't want to see a therapist.
No. Because I wasn't taught that way.
That's what I'm saying. So with you having that mentality and that mindset, you went to see your pastor though. So did you go to him to be your therapist, or is that what you were seeking?
So yes and no. The great thing about Pastor Rudy is that he's not your traditional pastor.
Yeah.
I was introduced to him first as a friend.
Okay.
And I first started my work at St. John through being on the board of the Bread of Life. And I eventually became a member of the church.
Gotcha.
So my connection to him was one as a friend first and a minister second. Not understanding that it would all be a source of ministry. And he is the one who showed me that, showed me Christianity from a different perspective than what I was, what I thought I was taught. Not saying that that's what I was taught, but just what I viewed as what I was supposed to do. And so yes, it was like I was hoping that he was going to tell me why I felt exhausted, but he didn't.
That's what I'm saying. So although you felt like I don't need to talk to a therapist, deep down within you felt like I need to talk to somebody.
But he made it, and he made it into a way that I was like, oh, maybe I do need to see a therapist, because he didn't just say go see a therapist.
Well, I know what I'm talking about before even coming to him and him saying that.
Because at this point, I literally was like, I can't go anymore. Like I didn't want to wake up. I mean, the Rise and Run started like 10 years ago. Me posting on Facebook. I would post on Facebook, and people know this. Like I would post how many miles I ran, and I would say this inspirational quote, and I'll be like, "Rise and run." And I didn't want to post those no more because I didn't feel like rising and running. And it really took somebody sending me an inbox message on Facebook. And she was like, "Oh, you haven't posted your Rise and Run." Like she was really encouraged and inspired by those. And I was like, "Cause I'm not rising and running. Like I don't feel like it. Like I'm not feeling it right now. I'm in a different space right now." And I was like, I'm really, like, I know running was no longer serving the purpose of the meditation for me because I was just burnt out. I was exhausted, spiritually and mentally exhausted.
It's interesting because we're talking about the importance of maintaining a healthy lifestyle. And see, a lot of people just equate healthy living with how you eat.
Diet and
exercise. Getting adequate rest, sleep, or whatever, drinking water, and limiting the amount of intake of certain things. But it does, and I'm so glad we're talking about this because it does involve mental and emotional wellness as well.
Yeah.
And so what you're talking about is having to deal with, because like you say, so many people, they see those that are in the limelight, in the public sphere, and they think, man, they're perfect. I want to be like them. Oh my God, they have the perfect life, the perfect relationship, the perfect marriage, the perfect career, the perfect X, Y, Z.
Yes.
But they don't know what really is going on inside. So I'm glad that you're sharing.
I don't know the backstory.
Yeah. So you said that you didn't want to rise and run anymore, but if you're at liberty to, what got you to that point? I mean, because you were rising and running and posting all this inspirational stuff, but I mean, what was it that you said, what, to hell with this? I don't want to do none of that no more.
I mean, because it gets to a point where you have nothing left inside of you. And I was just, my tank was on E. It was just, I was empty. And that's when I really started to look at health and wellness. And in my company, I separate those two words because a lot of people use those interchangeably. When health is not wellness and wellness is not health, because health is a state of being and wellness is a state of living. Because like health is like something that you achieve, like it's the goal. It's free of disease, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. But wellness is a continuous state and process. It's something that you live through every day. It's a continually evolving process. It goes beyond just being free of disease like diet and exercise. It's more than that. And so I had got to the point where my state of wellness was so, the way I was living, my state of living, my wellness was so on zero that it then affected my state of health. So it literally manifested. So like I tell people, mental and spiritual, the depletion of your spiritual and mental wellness can manifest itself in a physical state. I ended up being diagnosed with an autoimmune disease in that process. And so then it showed up physically and affected my actual health. And so that's when I knew I couldn't continue to just run. Because now I got diagnosed with a chronic illness that there's no cure for, and the doctors are telling me that I can no longer run. They're like, well, at this point you can't run because of this disease, because it's your heart is going to fail, your muscles are going to fail you, and you can't be a runner with these conditions. And I was just like, okay, now I have no go-to, and because running was my go-to. And I was like, well, not giving up running was not an option, so I need to figure out what is it that I'm doing that's affecting my health so much that I can't run. And so I had to deal with my actual emotional, mental, spiritual wellness in order to be physically healthy to continue to run.
So you first day on the couch,
yes,
at the therapist, I mean, you had a reluctance going to see a therapist in the beginning. So what was that like?
It was just like, first it was like, okay, I'm gonna go, because I have to. And then it was more of, I was like, ooh, she don't even look like me. You know, I was like, how she gonna know my struggle? You know, and so that was a whole nother situation that I had to get past. And
when you say she didn't look like you, what you mean? She wasn't.
Culturally,
black?
she wasn't
Okay.
me. Like, yeah, black. She wasn't
she
black.
Wasn't a sister.
She wasn't black. And then I was like, you know, Crystal, just, you know, just go for it. You can pay for this.
Uh-huh.
You know, just go. And I did really well with giving talking points, basically. I was able to turn on the Crystal that people see on Instagram and Facebook, and I gave very surface responses. Mm-hmm. And she saw straight through that. Mm. And that's when it got real. Because not knowing that she was a person who reads energy. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So no matter what I said to her, she was reading my body energy. Mm-hmm. And so once I finished, she was just like, that's good. But, you know, right. There's more.
Yeah.
And so that's when that made me want to come back, because I was like, okay, she see me. And I always wanted people to see me. I wanted people to see that I wasn't okay without me saying I wasn't okay.
Yeah. Yeah, like a discernment.
Yeah, it's just, and it was the weirdest thing, because she was like, Crystal, you expect people to have some level of care, or be like, or come to you and like say, are you okay? But people are going to continue to think you okay because you're showing a version of you that's okay. And that's doing well. So you need to start showing the other parts of it. And that's when I began to change what I post. Now people see the good days, the bad days, all of it. And I made sure in the book that I shared the good, the bad, and the ugly. Mm-hmm. So people can understand that it's okay to be like that, because I realized that I was, and that was like my breaking point, because I was not okay, and I didn't know how to let people in to help me, because I grew up being the person who was always helping people. Mm-hmm. And always being the strong person, and always, you know, being someone's inspiration and motivation, and not getting that in return.
And it wasn't reciprocal.
Yes.
So how many sessions did you have to go through to get this?
I'm still in therapy.
Okay,
it's a process.
So it's a process.
Well,
okay.
I just, because I don't think there's like an end, right? I just think you go to a next level of development. I tell people all the time, you go to the doctor for an annual exam every year. You go get your teeth cleaned every 6 months. Why wouldn't you not go see a therapist? So you don't wait to go to the doctor till you're in pain. So why wait till something's going down for you to go see a therapist? And so I continue to see the therapist even when things are quote unquote good, because I think there's levels in process, and I think it's more so about preventative. So when I do hit a slump in my life, that things don't just fall apart. Mm-hmm. Because I already have the tools, the tactics, the understanding, because I've been in therapy throughout the whole time.
You know, you said a couple of things, man, that just stood out to me, because I talk to people often and I hear it often. You know, matter of fact, even yesterday, I was talking to a couple of people. One was a pastor, and another was a lady who's very, very spiritual and focused. And I was explaining to them about something that I was dealing with. And, you know, the pastor was giving me very encouraging advice and wisdom and prudence, and, you know, of course, tying it back to the word, but also practical stuff, whereas she was just like, you just got to have faith. You just got to get over it. You know, don't let them bother you. And it's just not that easy.
It's not.
And to your point, though, you said something earlier about how, you know, this is so taboo, and people think that by going to see a therapist, that means you're crazy.
Yeah.
Or that you are damaged, or that something's wrong with you. Mm-hmm. And that's not the case. Just like you said, preventative maintenance. Mm-hmm. You know, you go to get an oil change on your car before the sludge builds up and your engine, you know, locks up. And, you know what I'm saying? And you can't drive it anymore at all. You got to get a whole new engine.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that you're making some great points here that, you know, it's very healthy for us to, particularly as African American people, because we deal with a lot. Yeah. I mean, just being black, we deal with a lot.
Well, I mean, the state of being a black person in America, every day you live trauma.
Yeah.
And the sad part about it is that we've normalized the trauma state to the point that where it feels normal to us when it's not, because we've lived it. We don't know another way of living because that's what we've lived. And and this is what I do in my day-to-day work, talking about culturally responsive healing practices, because we literally, because of the world we live in, because of the country we live in, just going to get groceries, pumping gas, driving your car, going to your job, you're dealing with trauma. Because you're living in a space where there's biases that exist. There's inequalities that exist. There are inequities that exist, and they're all trauma-based. And so every step of your life, you're dealing with some level of trauma. And when actual other traumas come in, that's when we kind of fall apart, and we talk about prayer about it. But we don't even deal with the unconscious, what I like to call unconscious trauma, because we live in a very unconscious trauma state without, losing your job and doing all the other things that may be traumatic, or a death of a family member. So outside of that, just the state of living in America is very traumatic for a Black person.
Like when you say unconscious trauma, give some examples.
Unconscious trauma is like you going on a job and dealing with microaggressions because you're the only Black person at the job, and not realizing that these are microaggressions until you get in a state where it's a healthy environment for you, and you realize that you do or act in a certain way. I was just in the same experience like last year. I was working for a nonprofit where one, being a nonprofit and being an executive in fund development, it's only 2% of us that are Black. And I was in a nonprofit working as exec in fund development, where in the United States we're only 2% of the population. And not only that, I was the Black person, the only Black exec period in the organization, and not realizing how traumatic of an experience and an environment I was in until I was heading out. Because the microaggressions became macroaggressions, and then it was a quick exit, and not realizing the trauma I felt until I was now working in a space where it's a more safe environment amongst my people. And now I don't have to deal with those microaggressions, but I caught myself acting as if I was still in that state of the other job, and I'm like, oh, I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's
so we do it and not even know we're doing it.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I don't know if I agree with the fact that working with Black folks is a lot better.
No, I'm not saying that.
No, I'm just saying, because I done work with some.
It can be very traumatic. I've been in those positions too.
It's very traumatic working with Black people sometimes.
I've been there.
I've been there. Sometimes more traumatic.
Yes.
I'll be honest.
You have more love because it's your people, and so you put more heart into it. So you're more sensitive to things when you're working with your people. So I'm not saying it's just because of that, but just there are situations where that are when I say they're unconscious, because they're a lot of times they're beyond your control. You're doing what you're supposed to do, but there's another person that has a bias against you and decides to respond and act a certain way because of who you are, and you're just doing you, and you had no control over that. And we're placed in those situations just by being the color that we are in the world that we live in.
Yeah, and then, sometimes, when you are, like you say, when you have a love for something and you give yourself to that cause, I think about Colin Kaepernick, and how, he had a vibrant career, NFL quarterback, and made a decision on behalf of his people to take a knee to combat something that all of us, as particularly African-American men, young boys, dealing with police, law enforcement, and the criminal justice system. And he took the opportunity to highlight that and was vilified for it and then lost his career. And you think about the people who have the power and authority in whatever space to bring that trauma to your life. Because I can't even imagine what he felt and was dealing with. And then you had some African Americans who he's advocating for that was vilifying him.
Yes.
Like what he, so that's, I think about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And a lot of people, praise him now. But all of the stuff that he was dealing with, and even amongst his own people, a lot of his colleagues, his pastors, and a lot of Black people didn't support him.
Yeah, but that's that unconscious trauma.
Yeah.
They didn't want to support him because they didn't want to disrupt the man.
Mm.
Or for and Kaepernick, it's like, you got this good job.
Yeah. You
working
should be
for these
content.
people.
Yeah. You should
These
be.
people didn't get you good money.
Right. Yeah.
They done paid you well. So, but that's that unconscious trauma, because we've taught that if they write us a check, you're supposed to just perform regardless of the situation.
Mm.
But that's how you were brought up. Go get a good job, get that money for the people, and just do your job, which you're supposed to, because that's what generations before us did.
Right.
And so it's built-in trauma from just, it's not that bad. You got this money. We can do something with this money. And so we'll just deal with.
Yeah, just be content, accept.
We'll deal with a little bit of racism that you may see because they paying you good money. And that's the trauma that sits within us that you don't even realize exists, because it's what your grandmother had to experience, but it's not that we have to experience it now.
Yeah, yeah. So going back to the book, the finish line was just the start.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the chapters, and how you said that from the starting line to the finish line, you had thoughts and a journey, and that's captured in the book. So let's talk. You said at the starting line, like you got the butterflies, you excited, you got your new outfit, like first day of school. But you said something about getting halfway through.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm not a marathon runner, and a lot of us probably watching are not. But many have been maybe athletes and have probably ran a 5K or done a walk or something. And at some point, I guess.
But it's similar experiences, because.
So talk about it.
So there's a chapter in there. It's called The Wall, and the wall amongst the marathon community is generally like mile 21. And if you ever watch a marathon, you'll see it. It's like a death march. People are just trying to make it to the finish. It's not cute to look at. It's like that slow Greg, they sweating. It's like salt coming all out their skin. So it's in the marathon training, we call it the wall, because you hit the wall, because it's the point where physically your body cannot perform anymore. The only thing that's going to get you to the finish line is your mental capacity at this point. And it happens. I've done it, like I said, several times, and I still hit the wall. And it's just because your body physically it just doesn't have any more to give at that time. So that's when you have to, turn off the physical and turn on the mental. And there's times in our lives when that's the case, where, there's nothing physically that you can do that's going to push you through this issue that you're experiencing. It's only going to take your emotional and your mental and your spiritual well-being to push you through. That's the only thing that, I'm sure people be in a circumstance I don't know how I made it through that. Without being in a straitjacket. Right. It's those situations. So it's that, and that's what I mean, translating it to life. And the good part about it is that when I feel like I'm going through something in my life where it's my proverbial wall, I'm hitting a wall, I remind myself that, Crystal, you didn't hit this wall 150 times. Surely whatever's going on today, you can do it, because you've watched yourself get to that finish line over and over and over again. And that's why the book is named The Finish Line Was Just the Start, because as soon as we get to one finish line, there's always a new start and a new race that we're going to run. And so it is with life. You go through one issue, there's bound to be another issue that's going to come up. And that's going to happen, and you're going to go through the same range of emotions. It's just up to us to build what I like to call the mental and spiritual callus. Just like and marathon runners, this is going to sound real crazy. I don't, when I go get my pedicure, I leave the callus on my feet. And most of them look at you crazy. But the callus that builds up is this protective wall, a layer of skin where you don't get blisters. So what we do in life is we have to learn how to build that spiritual and that mental and that spiritual callus up, to where when things come our way, we don't get blistered and we don't allow it to affect us or change the way we walk and step and put on shoes, because it's left a bruise and it's painful. So people can really relate to life. This is what life is about. When you get to that wall, you got to push through. And the push through is not necessarily just keep going, but it's a good reminder of like, you've done this before, so you can do it again. And most of the time when we thinking about like, oh my God, this is so hard, if you really think about it, you've done harder things. Mm-hmm. And so in that moment it seems hard, but if you really think about all the things that were hard that you actually got over and accomplished, what you're going through in that moment is probably not that hard.
Yeah.
And so it's that constant reminder that you can get through it because you've done it before, not because someone's saying pick yourself up by your bootstraps. It's just that you've been there before, you developed the tools, you know what it feels like, and you know that you can actually make it to that finish line.
So you started off running in what, high school, middle school?
No, I didn't start running until almost 30. Like my first marathon wasn't until like in my 20. So
I mean, you weren't a track and field runner, none of that?
No. And that's
now.
the crazy part. Running was like, I played tennis. I was a tennis player. Everybody know JY tennis player. Team. We have the best tennis team. But anyway, a lot of people don't talk about JY tennis team, but that's a whole nother story. But I played tennis from a little girl all the way up through college. Like, I was a tennis player. And so actually Zena Garrison, I started Zena Garrison at McGregor Park. You know, that's where my tennis life started, and I was a tennis player. And actually running was like the last thing I wanted to do. And I remember, and it's so funny now because I get a chance to see my middle school track coach at Memorial Park every morning now. But even then, I tried to run cross country as a way to train for tennis, and because tennis is an endurance sport. And so, and I sucked. And Coach Nectar, he knows I suck, but he smiled every morning when he see me, you know, at the park now, because it's like, remember me in the 7th and 8th grade? I sucked. You know, right. I was not a runner. Like, no. My dad was a runner, and my oldest brother was a runner, but no, not me.
Yeah. So, what made you say, you know what, I'm just finna start running, and not only running marathons?
Okay, because this is where this hard-headed, stubborn girl, like, so I was literally working for a nonprofit. I will not say, no, I was working for the American Heart Association. And I had a slip and fall accident, ended up being injured, being out, but later finding out that I actually had nerve damage, and it rendered me to have paralysis from hip to foot. I was paralyzed from hip to foot. Had to go through PT and physical therapy, and through physical therapy, they were just like, okay, you just got to learn how to walk with this cane, because this is going to be it for you. Like you gonna, and I was like, in my late 20s, like, a cane was not sexy. And I was like, it doesn't accommodate my heels properly.
Right.
Like, I'm not standing a cane. And they were like, well, you're gonna have to learn how to just walk with this cane. And so to myself, like, during the moments that I had no movement, I literally was talking to myself, and I was just like, I remembered my mentor that I had when I was in college in undergrad at U of H and he took us to Africa. And when we were in Africa, he had us run 6 miles every morning. And I just remember him and the words that he would tell me. And Jelani Williams is his name. Jelani Williams would, you know, tell us like all these words and talk about life. And I would look at my leg, and I'm like, not only I'm going to move this leg and learn how to walk right, I'm going to run a marathon. Because he was a marathon runner. And I was like, I'm going to run a marathon. Jelani ran a marathon, I'm going to run a marathon. And 9 months later, after physical therapy, I ran my first marathon. And it was addictive at that point.
And how many miles was this?
26.2 miles.
26.2 miles. I
went from a cane to going to Herman Park, trying to learn how to run without a cane, and having my little angel now, my little running angel, help me, you know, as I would fall and run and all that kind of good stuff, and just really helped me. And so that was my motivation. Once I saw that I can accomplish a goal from walking on a cane, not knowing how to balance, to running an actual marathon, I wanted to do it over and over again.
Yeah. So you talk about the wall. So when you did your first marathon, did you hit the wall?
Oh, it was all walls. The whole marathon was a wall. Let me tell you. So, because I didn't know anything about marathon running. I just knew I wanted to run one. And I looked and saw when the next one was and signed up for it. It was the Marine Corps Marathon in Washington, D.C. And I signed up for it. Did not properly train. Didn't know all the specifics to like clothes and shoes and socks and what you should eat. I knew none of that stuff. I just knew I was going to finish. And I ran, and the guy I was dating at the time, I talked him into running it with me. He's crazy, crazy enough to do it. And so we just, with, you know, like really bare minimum skills, just like we ran what would be considered like a pretty tough course too of a marathon. And I was like, okay, this didn't feel good. I literally got on a plane back to Houston the same day that I ran the marathon and had the medal around my neck. I was so excited, and I couldn't even stand up to get off the plane.
Wow.
And that's when I knew. I was like, okay, I'm going to have to find proper training. Because I was like, I just ran 26.2 miles, very, very hard to run. And now I can't even stand up to walk to get off the plane. They had to roll me out on a wheelchair. I was so embarrassed.
Oh, wow.
So no, it was not
easy. So both
easy.
of y'all finished?
We both finished.
And no stopping?
No, we stopped. So let me tell you. So my first marathon, it took me 5 hours and 40 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So we stopped and walked a lot.
Yeah.
So we ran most of it, but we walked a lot.
So when you say hitting the wall, is that a point where, okay, most people who hit the wall, do they stop completely? Do they quit? Do they?
Well, I would say a lot of people, their first time runners, they do. And that's like the worst thing you can do because the lactic acid build up in your legs and you get cramps and all that kind of stuff. But that's when most people just like stop and just start walking, or some people stop and just like drop out. It's a very unique part of the marathon. I tell people, if you want to see the struggle of life in a marathon, watch mile 21 of a marathon, because that's
so. Is it the start of mile 21 or the end of mile 21?
Well, it's just in that range, because some people it's mile 21, some people it's mile 18, some people it's 22. So it's like in that 21 is like that sweet spot. Some people it's a couple of miles before, some people it's a couple of miles after. It's just that because the finish line is still so far for you to even comprehend that your body can possibly do like another 5.5 miles that you just like, no.
So has there ever been a time where you stopped, where you just said, I can't do this anymore?
Yes, I have. Okay. 2 were involuntarily. 1 was a voluntarily, like, I'm just not doing this today. So I have 3 DNFs. 1 was, and I remember feeling so empowered when I stopped by myself. I was literally at it's right after the half, so I was like at mile 15, and it's literally where it used to be California Pizza Kitchen at San Felipe and Post Oak. Mm-hmm. And it's like mile 15. Now I got to still go through Tanglewood, Memorial Park, back to downtown.
Oh, wow.
I literally walked
downtown Houston?
Yes.
Oh, Lord.
So that was like the rest of the route. And so I passed California Pizza Kitchen, and I stopped and walked right back to California Pizza Kitchen, ordered some food, and I was like, I'm done. I'm done. This is it. I called my friends. I was like, y'all, I know y'all at the Georgia Brown, but I'm at California Pizza Kitchen. I'm not doing this today.
Wow. I mean, was it just mentally you weren't there? Or
mentally, I had tapped out. Like, I had tapped out literally probably about 3 miles before that. But I had people cheering like at the halfway mark and all that. So I made it through. And if you see the marathon, like the Gallerias, like a lot of people are out there and they're cheering. But the cheers get really, really straggly once you get to like San Felipe. And so I knew once you get turned into Tanglewood, it was like nobody's cheering, because that's where the Bushes was living, and the security wouldn't let people out on that end. So it was like, it really gets dead. And I was like, before I get to the dead part, where I know I don't have anywhere to go, because there's nowhere to go but residential areas, let me stop where I can sit, get me something to eat, get something to drink, and tell people to meet me. And so that's what I did. And the other 2 were involuntarily. It was medical issues that stopped me from finishing.
So you're a wellness expert.
Yeah.
And so explain what a wellness expert is and what type of advice or information, I guess prudence do you provide people?
Well, I guess people have dubbed me a wellness expert, but when I was in college, I actually had, and I tell you, I'm the person that like do the most, like can't walk, run a marathon. So as I was in college, I literally had a health ailment where my colon stopped working. And the doctors was just like, let's just hope you don't die of toxicity because they had nothing to make your colon stop. And I was like, that's not an option. Like, what are you talking about? I'm at this point, I'm like, I am a tennis athlete and I think I'm smart, so I'm going to figure it out myself. You can't answer my questions, I'll figure it out myself. So I literally went and started reading all these books about the colon. Then I started reading about food and started taking classes. And then the lady was like, well, if you can take this many classes, you'll have a degree in nutrition and be a certified nutrition. I was like, really? I was like, so I just did it, not to do it as a job, but I was just, okay. So I did, but it was really a task to heal myself. And in that process, people saw my body change. They saw my healing process and began to ask me questions about like, how did you do it? What did you do? What are you doing? And I started just giving advice. And then it went from giving advice to when I was still at the same time, still working at my job as a lobbyist. And I was like giving a nutrition advice on the side. And they had a round of layoffs and I got laid off. And I went on Facebook as a joke. I was like, hey, now accepting clients for nutrition. And by the end of the day, I had 5 clients. By the end of that week, I was on the radio talking with 97.9 The Box with Nate about my nutrition clients. And then the next week, I was on with Mia Gradney on Channel 11 on the news as a wellness expert. And it just like moved from there. And here we are 11 years later. It's like a thing. I was like, it just like ran without me. Like it started and I was just like, oh, this is a thing. Like, I just doing this because I ain't had nothing else to do because I got laid off. Really, I'm that girl that's in politics. Like, I don't know how this shift happened, but it happened. But it's still, like I always tell people, my purpose is what I do in my day-to-day job as a fund development executive. But my passion and my work is really, health and wellness and providing answers for people that are not getting the answers, because that was my frustration. I went to the doctor and they could not answer questions that I had, and I don't want people to go through that level of frustration that I went through by not getting the questions answered. Because a lot of times what we don't understand is we put a lot on our doctors. I realized I was doing that. My doctor finally told me, she said, I am a doctor of medicine. Not a doctor of health, not a doctor of wellness. I'm a doctor of medicine. And she was like, and she just told me, she's like, way more than me when it comes to food. So don't like expect me to answer this question, that question. And when that really clicked to me, I was like, I need to be able to work in tandem with doctors, with individuals who now have questions that may want to try other healing modalities when it comes to ailments and for preventative care through food. And so that's what kind of made me go the unique route that I went, because now if you want to try an alternative to medication through food, or if you just want to try something in tandem with your doctor as far as medication, now I can provide you with that consultation to do so.
So what are some of the common things that some of your clients or just everyone that's watching today need to hear and know? I know you get paid for this, but
oh no,
I'm just saying, what are some of the common things?
The common thing there is one thing is, like I always preach to people, there is such thing as too much of a good thing. You can exercise too much and stress out the body. I learned from that, and cause yourself to have an autoimmune disease. That is me. So stress is when your body's under stress, the natural reaction of your body is to build inflammation, which is our body's healing tool when under stress. But when your body is under stress and that buildup of inflammation becomes too much, it becomes disease. And so that's the root cause of majority of our diseases is inflammation. And sometimes that comes through stress. It could be physical stress from exercise or movement or what, or but it also could be stress, mental stress, emotional stress that builds inflammation in the body. So there is too much is such thing as too much of a good thing when it comes to exercise and movement. There's also too uh, too much of a good thing when it comes to supplementation. When people take a bunch of supplements, there's a response that the body goes through called hypervitaminosis, which means your body is overdosing on vitamins. It's very similar to a chemical reaction to body overdosing on drugs. And so we have to understand that if you're taking vitamins that your body doesn't need, if it's not a water soluble vitamin, it's a fat soluble vitamin, your body cannot secrete and process it out. So what ends up happening is you have kidney stones. It starts with kidney stones or some other things, but you can overdose on supplements. And plus, we're living in the United States where supplements are not regulated, so you should be cautionary of supplementations anyway, because most of the time the supplements you're taking that's on that label is not what you think it is. Which is why I started my whole line of supplements, so people can actually be getting what they actually think they're getting. Because long as you have at least 51% of what you're saying it is, you can actually sell it on your shelf. Like if it's 50% vitamin C, I can label it and call it vitamin C, but it can be 49% something else. And so that's
for real.
Yes. Also, when it comes to water, the body can have way too much water, just like you can be dehydrated. You can also have too much water and mess up your electric light and your sodium levels. I know a lot of people are doing these like gallon challenges, which I just like cringe, because it depends on your body size and your body actual secretion, your sweat equity. So that's how much water your body actually needs, because you can be getting water through food. You can be getting water because a lot of foods are water-based foods. So you can actually drink too much water, just like you can have too little water. And also another thing is too much of a good thing is that a lot of people find, like, when they decide they want to get on a good diet, they eat the same healthy meal every day, like, because they find something they like and they'll eat that same thing. I mean, you see it when people, I meal prep Monday or meal prep Sunday, and they see like all of the same foods and they eat this every day. So now what happens is that your body doesn't have the variety that it needs, so your gut suffers. The gut needs a variety, not just a variety of food, but a variety of vitamins and a variety of actual substance. So you can have a healthy balance in the gut, but also you need a healthy balance of your gut bacteria. And you can't get that if you're not getting a well-balanced diet, and well-balanced diet means a variety in the diet. So those are the things that most people don't pay attention to off the bat, that I always say, those are just across the board, or things that's particular to everyone.
All right. What about, being social? A lot of people are very social throughout the week. There's a lot of alcohol, maybe cigar smoking, and things like that, So I know some folks who smoke 3-4 cigars a day. And I'd be like, how do you do that? But anyway, I mean, how does that impact you from a health standpoint and wellness?
Cigars are cigars. So are they better than cigarettes? Absolutely. But are they bad? Absolutely. So it's more so from a bronchial perspective. You have to understand you can actually kill the performance of your bronchial system from smoking cigars, and that's just the biggest cautionary thing, and develop things later in life like COPD. And that's basically when just so much scar tissue build up on the lungs, and the scar tissue build up because the inflammation that you cause your lungs to go through from smoking the cigars. And so then you build up this scar tissue over time and end up having either really severe asthma or COPD over time. Alcohol is, the worst thing about alcohol is the stuff that people add to alcohol, the sugars. So, but alcohol, of course, in moderation is okay. It's just the excessiveness of alcohol, because you're not giving your liver time to kind of regroup, and the liver and the kidney can suffer in that process if it's overworking, trying to, filter the alcohol, but at the same time, it's probably filtering a lot of the fat that you also have given yourself at the time that you're having alcohol. Because I cringe too, because then what people do is drink a lot of alcohol, then they think they have to soak it up with foods, and I just like, that's like the worst thing you can do, because now your kidneys and your liver is working twice as hard, because it's working hard to filter the alcohol, now it's having to work hard to filter the fat. So that's kind of really, it's just like, moderation is key.
So looks like we have some folks in the chat that have been making comments and whatnot, man, and do we have some? So how do you feel about health? And our summer bodies really made in fall and winter. How do you all feel about fitness and health? We like that Crystal started with mental health first. That's important.
Yeah, it is important. Summer bodies, I mean, yeah, they really made in the fall and the winter, because what a lot of people end up doing is end up putting themselves on like this crazy regimen of trying to like lose a bunch of weight at one specific given a time, which that creates one, unrealistic expectations that stresses the body out, but two, it creates a bad habit for you to think that, oh, let me hurry up and drop this, and what you end up doing is probably manipulating the body weight through restrictive diet and really heavy excessive exercise, which neither one of them is good for your wellness.
Okay, well, I think it goes without saying, how do you feel about health and wellness? And, I think the better question is, what advice would you give someone who may not be on a health and wellness journey right now?
Somebody that's not on a health and wellness journey, the first thing I would say is really doing a self-assessment. I self-assess like almost every week. I used to do it every month, but just like really take a stock of how do your body feel. And then when I say how does your body feel, how do your mind feel? Or, you have a lot of brain fog. That kind of dictates like your mental space. Also, how do your body feel? Because a lot of times we don't really pay attention to our body. We must so pay attention to what our body physically look like, what our physical appearance, but how does your body feel? Because that's when I really figure out that I had a autoimmune disease. It wasn't, I was a nutritionist, I was a marathon runner, and you look at my lab work, everything looked really great. I'm pretty healthy. But I had autoimmune disease because I just didn't feel right. So it's important that we first start paying attention to how does our body feel.
Could you explain that? Because you've said it many times, autoimmune disease. What is
So
that actually?
autoimmune disease, there's a whole bunch of them. And I laugh because I said they throw a disease in the autoimmune category when they can't explain it. But autoimmune diseases are basically when your body produces a bunch of inflammation in a certain area, and your immune system have a harsh response to it, and your immune system is not working at its best. Most people are familiar with, I guess, the cool kids on the block when it comes to autoimmune diseases like MS. A lot of people know what MS. A lot of people know what
sclerosis.
Yeah, multiple sclerosis. People know about lupus. Alopecia now is really big thanks to Jada Pickett. And so I have Graves' disease, which is probably not one of the hot ones on the block, but it just depends. So like with Graves' disease, it causes your basically it's like I have a inflammation build up and cause a thyroid disorder. And so my thyroid is for Graves, there's Hashimoto's, which is another autoimmune, where your thyroid is underactive, where mine is overactive, which means my body metabolizes faster than most people, which most people think, oh, that's a good thing. I was like, no, that means my body's not processing nutrients. And also, you can actually go into a cardiac arrest because it also attacks the muscle groups in the body. So your body goes limp, like drop things, which is why you can't run, because they don't think you can get good balance. You lose your eyesight because your eyes are a muscle, and tons of other things like that.
Wow. So I want to talk quickly again about the books. How can people get the books, by the way?
CrystalHadnott.com. Both books are available. Plus, also Rise and Run is coming out with the journal, so they can also pre-order the journal to go as a supplement to the devotional.
So this book right here, The Finish Line Was Just the Start, was about your
my life, my journey,
and your journey, and also tying it to being a marathon runner. But this one, Rise and Run, the daily devotional.
Yeah, so the daily devotional, I was like, once people got to know who I was, I think now they can get a sense of what guided me in that process, which was my mental state. So the daily devotional is really to get people into that space of taking accountability of their mental space and doing it through, I also because I am a runner, everything plays on that whole running, which is what the Rise and Run is. But really it was what were the tactics, what were the characteristics that I developed as a runner that made me mentally well, made me mentally tough. And so each devotion is based on a characteristic. Like one of the characteristics is resilience. Another one is focus. One is trust. So all these characteristics that I developed as a runner, I created devotions behind them.
Mm-hmm. So, anybody watching today, including myself, if we wanted to just in 9 months be a marathon runner and run those 26 miles, we
can do it in 16 weeks, 4 months.
We can do it.
You just need 4 months of training to be a marathon.
All right, y'all hear that? I got the production team in the back. Y'all ready to run this marathon?
Back in 4 weeks. Sure. The Houston Marathon is actually 16 weeks away.
All right, so Houston Marathon, we need to get started today, y'all. Y'all ready? Y'all down?
Or they can kick it off with Lululemon. Actually, is coming to Houston, which I'm really excited about, and proud to be a part of the Lululemon family. Is that Lululemon is coming out with a 10K, so you can come and just have fun and see what this whole process is really to induce people to movement. So you don't have to be a runner. You can be a walker. You can be a cyclist. You can be on your skates. You could, be on your skateboard. So it's really about teaching people about healthy movement, but also about community.
You can be like a virtual walker too, though.
You can be virtual.
Virtual runner. I can just watch.
You don't have to be in that action. No, you have to actually move wherever you are. But
I'm just saying. I mean, we can just, they got those virtual. What do they call them?
The VR headsets.
The VR, yeah.
Yep. I'm actually working with a company right now. We're actually doing some virtual exercises.
Yeah, well, see, that's it. Well, maybe we get into the virtual game, the virtual reality game.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I so appreciate you.
Thank you for having me,
Crystal, for being on, man. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate you for being vulnerable, sharing your life's journey, continued journey. Yeah. As you continue to focus on your health and wellness personally. And I know that your comments, your life's journey and experiences are going to help everyone. I just want to encourage everybody to, again, you have The Finish Line Was Just the Start of Marathons Runners, Memoir of Relentlessness, Resilience, and Renewal by Crystal Hadnott. And of course, we have Rise and Run, a daily devotional to running your best life by also Crystal Hadnott. CrystalHadnott.com, you say?
Yes, CrystalHadnott.com.
All right. Well,
and that's Hadnott with 2 T's.
Hadnott with 2 T's. Thank you for being on Real Talk Junkies today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And look, guys, I want to encourage you to share the link. Always get ready for next week, because every Wednesday we bringing you another exciting conversation around, you don't know what we're going to talk about, but whatever it is, it's going to be fire. And I just want to encourage everybody, go visit forwardtimes.com to check out the latest news about the Black community and for the Black community. And of course, visit me, JeffreyLBoney.com, to engage with me, as well as pick up the new book, Don't Argue With Me, a no-nonsense approach to the issues in the Black community. Peace, y'all. Let's go.